a prison cell turned into a home, a girl who cannot read, a grotto where garbage is thrown away. And yet there, precisely there, heaven chooses to speak. 1858. Europe is drunk on progress. Railways cross borders. Factories smoke without rest. Science promises a world without mysteries. In the salons of Paris, they debate whether God has died. In the universities, whether faith is merely the superstition of the ignorant. Positivism triumphs. Auguste Comte has decreed that humanity has surpassed the theological age. Meanwhile, in the French Pyrenees, there exists a village the world has forgotten. Lourdes, barely 4,000 souls, shepherds who speak an ancient dialect, mills that progress has left without work, muddy streets where pigs wander freely, a place of no importance, no future, of no interest to anyone. But God writes history with a different ink. Where the world sees insignificance, He prepares wonders. Where proud reason declares the supernatural impossible, He chooses to manifest Himself with a clarity that will leave the wise speechless. And the instrument of this divine intervention will not be a brilliant theologian or an eloquent preacher. It will be a 14-year-old girl who cannot write her own name. This is the story of Bernadette Soubirous, the story of how heaven chose the smallest to confound the great, the story of a grotto, a spring, and a message that continues to resound 160 years later. On the 7th of January, 1844, at the Bowley Mill, a child came into the world whom no one expected to remember. They named her Marie Bernard, though everyone would come to know her as Bernadette. Her mother, Louise Castereau, nursed her for only a few weeks before her milk dried up. The little one was sent to a wet nurse in Bartray, and there, among sheep and silences, the mystery of a life that seemed destined for nothing began to weave itself. The Bowley Mill was prosperous then. The stones turned, grain became flour, and François Soubirous, the father, could support his family with dignity. But prosperity stands on feet of clay when managed by a man more kind-hearted than shrewd. The fall was slow and merciless. François lost clients, accumulated debts, sold the mill. The family tumbled from dwelling to dwelling, each one darker, each one smaller, until they hit bottom in 1857. Le Cachot, that's what they called it in Lourdes, the old cell of the municipal jail, a hole of barely 160 square feet, where the town hall had once locked up prisoners. Damp, without ventilation, with a single tiny window that barely let in light. There the Soubirous family crowded together, father, mother, and 9 children, 4 of whom would die before reaching adulthood. The neighbors' manure piled up by the door. The smell was unbearable, and Bernadette, the firstborn, coughed without ceasing, with asthma that cholera had carved into her lungs when she was barely 10 years old. The illness had marked her forever. While other girls her age went to school, learned the catechism, prepared for First Communion, Bernadette tended sheep in Bartray, or helped at home with whatever her strength allowed. At 14, she could not read. She could not write. She had failed to memorize the basic prayers the parish priest required to receive the Eucharist. The neighbors watched her pass by, small, pale, with dark eyes that shone with a strange liveliness, but without any visible talent, without any grace to set her apart. She was, in the words of those who knew her then, a girl like any other, perhaps more insignificant than most. But there is a theology of insignificance that the world does not understand. St. Paul had proclaimed it. God chooses the weak of the world to confound the strong, the foolish to shame the wise, what is not to reduce to nothing what is. Bernadette had nothing to offer. She possessed no extraordinary beauty, nor outstanding intelligence, nor robust health, nor social standing, not even the showy piety of those who seek to stand out in churches. She was poor among the poor, sick among the healthy, ignorant among the learned, and precisely because of this, she was empty, empty of herself, empty of pretensions, empty of everything that might come between her and grace, like a clean chalice waiting to be filled, like a silence waiting for a voice. Heaven, which seeks available hearts more than brilliant minds, found in that prison cell turned home the perfect ground to plant a seed that would change the history of faith. Thursday, February 11th, 1858, dawned gray and cold in Lourdes. Bernadette, her younger sister Toinette, and a friend named Jeanne Abadie set out in search of dry firewood and bones they could sell for a few coins. Hunger does not wait, and in the cachot, every penny counted. Their steps led them toward the canal of the Savy Mill, near the Gave River, to a place the inhabitants of Lourdes avoided, the grotto of Massabielle. It was a filthy corner where pigs rooted among refuse, where people threw garbage, where stagnant water bred mosquitoes in summer, a place of pestilence and abandonment. The other two girls crossed the frozen canal without a second thought. But Bernadette stopped. Her asthma made her fear the cold water. She asked them to throw stones so she could cross without getting wet, but her companions refused with laughter and disappeared among the bushes. Alone by the canal, Bernadette began removing her stockings to wade through the water. Then she heard it. A strange noise, like the gust of a sudden wind, but the poplars remained motionless. She raised her eyes toward the grotto, and the world changed forever. In the natural hollow of the rock, where a wild rose bush grew, a light had appeared. And within that light, a figure. A young lady dressed in immaculate white, with a veil of the same color falling to her feet, girded by a sky-blue sash. Her bare feet, barely visible, bore upon each one a golden rose. Between her joined hands, she held a rosary of white beads, with a chain that shone like the sun. The lady smiled with a sweetness Bernadette had never seen on any human face. She did not speak. She only made the sign of the cross slowly. Bernadette, trembling, pulled her own rosary from her pocket and tried to cross herself, but her hand would not obey. Only when the lady completed the gesture could she imitate her. They prayed together, and when the rosary ended, the vision vanished as the morning dew vanishes beneath the sun. The apparitions followed one another with a regularity that bewildered everyone. 18 times, between February and July of that prodigious year, Bernadette went to the grotto. Sometimes alone, sometimes surrounded by ever-growing crowds who watched fascinated as the face of that illiterate girl became transfigured during ecstasy. The lady, whom Bernadette simply called Aquero in her Bigourdan dialect, began to speak. Her words were simple yet piercing as swords. "Penance, penance, penance," she repeated. "Pray to God for the conversion of sinners. Kiss the ground in penance for sinners." And Bernadette obeyed. She crawled on her knees over the stones, kissed the cold ground, ate bitter herbs like the ancient penitents of the desert. The crowd murmured. Some wept, others mocked. But no one could tear their eyes from that scene that seemed torn from another century, another era, a time when heaven and earth still conversed. On February 25th, something occurred that would seal forever the destiny of that forgotten place. The lady ordered Bernadette to drink and wash herself at the spring. But there was no spring in the grotto, only mud and stones. Bernadette looked confused. The lady pointed toward the back of the rocky niche. The girl approached, began to dig with her small hands, and from the mud emerged a trickle of murky water that gradually cleared until it flowed crystalline. A spring hidden for centuries had just been revealed. Bernadette drank from that muddy water, smeared her face with dirt. The crowd laughed with scorn. The visionary had gone mad. But the next day, the spring flowed abundant and pure, and the healings began to multiply. Blind who could see, paralyzed who walked, terminally ill patients who recovered without any possible medical explanation. The water of Massabielle was working wonders that no scientist could explain. But the supreme moment arrived on March 25th, the feast of the Annunciation of the Lord. For weeks, Bernadette had asked the lady her name, obeying Father Peramale, who demanded identification before believing. The lady always smiled without answering. That morning, Bernadette asked again with the humble insistence of one fulfilling a duty, and then the lady joined her hands at the height of her chest, raised her eyes toward heaven with an expression of ineffable joy, and pronounced in the local dialect of the Pyrenees the words that would resound through the ages, que soy era immaculada concepció. I am the Immaculate Conception. Bernadette did not understand. She ran repeating those strange words so as not to forget them, stumbling along the way until she arrived breathless before the parish priest. When she pronounced them, the priest's face turned pale. The dogma of the Immaculate Conception had been proclaimed by Pope Pius IX barely 4 years earlier, in 1854. It was a complex theological definition that the doctors of the Church had debated for centuries. And that girl who could not read, who had not made her first communion, who was completely ignorant of what those words meant, repeated them with the precision of one reciting a memorized message. She had not said, "I am the Virgin Mary," nor "I am the Mother of God." She had used an exact theological formulation that she herself could not comprehend. Heaven had signed its message with a seal that no impostor could have forged. News of the apparitions spread like wildfire through dry fields, and with it came the enemies. Police Commissioner Dominique Jacomet was the first to attack. He summoned Bernadette to his office and for hours tried to break her testimony. He twisted the girl's words, set verbal traps, threatened to lock up her parents if she didn't confess to the lie. Bernadette remained serene, correcting each of the officials' errors with a precision that exasperated him. When the commissioner wrote that she had seen a lady in a blue dress, she stopped his hand. "No, sir, the dress was white. Only the sash was blue." Jacomet sweated with frustration. That illiterate peasant girl was defeating him with the only weapon she possessed, the naked truth, repeated without variations, without embellishments, without contradictions. Imperial prosecutor Vital Dutour took over. A man of law, a convinced rationalist, he was certain he would unmask the fraud within minutes. But after interrogating Bernadette, he left his office more confused than when he entered. "There's no hysteria, no calculation, no madness," he murmured to his colleagues. "She simply tells what she says she saw." The Church, far from embracing the phenomenon, adopted a caution that bordered on hostility. The parish priest of Lourdes, Abbé Peramale, was a rough man, of deep faith but volcanic temperament. When Bernadette conveyed the lady's message requesting a chapel and processions, he dismissed her brusquely. "Tell that lady that if she wants a chapel, she must first say who she is, and have the rose bush at the grotto bloom in the middle of winter. If not, there will be no chapel." Bernadette nodded without taking offense and returned to the grotto to relay the response. The rosebush did not bloom, but the lady revealed her name, and that was enough for Peramale to understand that he was facing something beyond his comprehension. The Bishop of Tarbes, Monseigneur Bertrand Sévère Laurence ordered an investigative commission that would work for 4 years with relentless rigor. Theologians, doctors, civil officials all interrogated Bernadette dozens of times. They searched for the crack in her testimony, the detail that would betray the imposture. They never found it. The doctors were especially thorough. Dr. Dozus, a declared skeptic, observed Bernadette during her ecstasies and documented phenomena that defied natural explanation. During the apparitions, the girl remained absolutely motionless, her eyes fixed on a point in the grotto, insensitive to any external stimulus. Dozus held a lit candle to her fingers until the flame licked her skin for long minutes. Bernadette did not react, felt no pain, and no mark was left on her flesh. Upon emerging from the ecstasy, she was completely unaware of what had occurred. The alienists of the era, specialists in mental illness, examined her looking for signs of hysteria, epilepsy, or any disorder that might explain the visions. The verdict was unanimous: perfectly healthy, normal intelligence, no detectable pathology. That girl was not mad, nor was she lying. So what was happening at the grotto of Massabielle? The Parisian press feasted on the news. Anti-clerical newspapers published cruel caricatures, the visionary of Lourdes depicted as a drooling idiot, the Virgin Mary as a carnival ghost, the pilgrims as a flock of imbeciles. The Second Empire, though nominally Catholic, feared the phenomenon would destabilize public order. The authorities closed the grotto with barricades. They posted guards to prevent access. They threatened fines and imprisonment for anyone who disobeyed. But people kept coming. At night, evading surveillance. By day, praying from a distance. The spring that Bernadette had discovered flowed on, indifferent to imperial decrees, and its waters continued to work healings that no doctor could explain. Finally, Emperor Napoleon III, pressured by his wife Eugénie de Montijo, a devout Catholic, ordered the grotto reopened to the public. The faith of the people had defeated the bureaucracy of the state. But for Bernadette, the victory tasted of gall. The crowds besieged her seeking miracles she could not give. They tore pieces of her clothing as relics. They touched her expecting instant healings. She, who had only seen and transmitted, found herself turned into an object of veneration that horrified her. "The Blessed Virgin used me like a broom," she repeated with heartbreaking humility. "And what do you do with a broom when you've finished sweeping? You put it behind the door." In 1860, to protect her from public harassment, the ecclesiastical authorities placed her in the hospice of the Sisters of Charity of Nevers in Lourdes. There, far from the crowds, she finally learned to read and write. There she made her first communion at last, and there she began to prepare, in silence and prayer, for the vocation that called her, to disappear from the world, to belong only to God. On the 22nd of July, 1866, a young woman of 22 crossed through the gates of Lourdes for the last time. She did not look back. She carried no luggage of value, just a small bundle with humble clothes and the rosary she had held during the apparitions. Bernadette Soubirous was leaving for Nevers, more than 700 kilometers away, to enter the congregation of the Sisters of Charity and Christian Instruction. She would never return. She would never see the basilica that was beginning to rise above the sacred grotto. She would never participate in the massive pilgrimages that would soon make that corner of the Pyrenees famous. The visionary of Lourdes was becoming the most anonymous religious sister in France, and that was exactly what she had asked for. When the Mother Superior asked her what she knew how to do, Bernadette responded with the disarming sincerity that characterized her: "Nothing." Then the Superior added, "Why should we receive you?" And Bernadette, without an atom of false modesty, answered, "They told me you needed a sister to scrub the pots. I can do that." The mother house at Nevers became her hidden Calvary. It was not the humble tasks that made her suffer, for she embraced them with joy. It was the treatment from the one who was supposed to form her in religious life. The novice mistress, Mother Marie-Thérèse Vauzou, was a Bernadette of sharp intelligence and severe spirituality who had decided, even before meeting Bernadette, that the fame of the apparitions posed a danger to her soul. She feared vanity, spiritual pride, the temptation to believe herself special. And to combat these imaginary evils, she subjected Bernadette to a regime of systematic humiliations that lasted years. She corrected her publicly for minimal faults. She ignored her when she asked for advice. She treated her with a coldness that contrasted painfully with the affection she showed toward other novices. When Bernadette fell ill, she insinuated that she was exaggerating her ailments to attract attention. When she fulfilled her duties with perfection, she kept silent. Never a word of encouragement, never a gesture of tenderness. Bernadette accepted all of this without a single complaint, without a tear of self-pity, without a reproach. Years later, when asked why she had never defended herself, she responded simply, "Mother was doing her duty, and I was doing mine." The illness, that faithful companion since childhood, claimed its tribute with growing cruelty. The asthma that had marked her since she was a child became complicated with pulmonary and bone tuberculosis. A malignant tumor appeared on her right knee, causing her pain that witnesses described as horrifying. She spent entire weeks bedridden in the infirmary, unable to move without help, struggling to breathe, consumed by fevers that left her drained. The doctors marveled that she was still alive. The sisters who cared for her wept at seeing her suffering. But Bernadette had found in pain something that few saints managed to express with such clarity: her definitive vocation. "My job is to be sick," she would say without a trace of bitterness. When visitors asked her what she did all day in that bed of pain, she would answer, "I do my work, I suffer." And in her letters, which reveal an astonishing mystical depth for someone without theological training, she wrote, "The cross is the only book I want to study. My weapons are prayer and sacrifice. I will be armed until death." On Easter Wednesday of 1879, the 16th of April, Bernadette understood that the end had come. She was 35 years old, but her body seemed like that of a consumed old woman. She asked to be sat up in bed to receive the last sacraments. She kissed the crucifix they brought to her lips with a devotion that moved all those present. Then she asked for water, but when they brought it to her mouth, she could not swallow. Her eyes, those dark eyes that had beheld the Immaculate One, fixed upon the image of Christ crucified that hung before her bed. And then, with a voice barely audible but perfectly clear, she spoke the words that would be her spiritual testament: "Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for me, a poor sinner." She paused, as if wanting to engrave each syllable into eternity, and repeated, "Poor sinner." She bowed her head upon her chest and breathed her last. The sisters surrounding her bed then witnessed something none of them would ever forget. Bernadette's face, ravaged by years of illness and suffering, was illuminated with a supernatural peace, as if the light she had seen in the grotto of Massabielle had returned to carry her away. The broom had finished sweeping. Now she rested at last behind the door of heaven. 30 years after her death, Bernadette's body was exhumed for the first time. It was September 22nd, 1909, and the Church had initiated the beatification process that required the identification of her mortal remains. The doctors who opened the lead coffin expected to find what nature dictates: bones, dust, perhaps some fragments of cloth. What they found left them speechless. The religious sister's body remained intact. The skin retained its flexibility. The muscles had not decayed. The rosary she held between her fingers was rusted, the crucifix blackened by time, but the hands that gripped it seemed like those of someone asleep, not someone who had died 3 decades earlier. Doctors Jordan and David drafted a scientific report that carefully avoided the word miracle, but that could offer no natural explanation for what their eyes beheld. A second exhumation in 1919 confirmed the phenomenon, and a third, in 1925, allowed the body to be transferred to the crystal reliquary where it rests today in the chapel of the Saint-Gildard convent in Nevers. The official glorification came with the solemnity that Rome reserves for its most illustrious children. On June 14, 1925, Pope Pius XI proclaimed Bernadette Soubirous blessed in a ceremony that gathered thousands of faithful in St. Peter's Basilica. 8 years later, on December 8, 1933, the liturgical feast of the Immaculate Conception, the same pontiff raised her to the altars as a saint of the Universal Church. The date was no coincidence. That dogma which Bernadette had proclaimed without understanding, that identity which the Lady of the Grotto had revealed in Pyrenean dialect, would forever be linked to the memory of her messenger. The illiterate girl who had been unable to memorize the catechism entered the canon of saints alongside doctors, founders, and martyrs. But she, from heaven, surely smiled with the same humility as always. She had done nothing extraordinary. She had only told the truth. Lourdes transformed into what no one would have imagined in 1858. Above the filthy grotto where pigs once grazed, now rises a complex of basilicas that receives more than 6 million pilgrims every year. It is the second most visited Marian sanctuary on the planet, surpassed only by Guadalupe. The pools where the sick immerse themselves in water from the spring, discovered by Bernadette, have witnessed healings that defy all medical explanation. 70 of them have been officially recognized as miraculous by the Church after investigations that include committees of doctors, many of them non-believers, who certify the scientific impossibility of what occurred. But beyond physical healings, Lourdes remains a place where something invisible yet real transforms those who arrive broken by pain, doubt, or despair. The sick who are not healed in body find peace for their souls. Skeptics who come to mock leave deep in thought. Lukewarm believers return on fire. The water keeps flowing, clear and cold, just as it did that February day when a child's hands drew it from the mud. And in Nevers, far from the bustle of pilgrimages, Bernadette's body remains in its crystal reliquary as a silent sign. Pilgrims who visit her contemplate a serene face covered by a thin wax mask that protects the original features, and joined hands that seem to continue praying the rosary of eternity. She, who never wanted to be seen, who fled from fame, who asked to be forgotten like a broom behind a door, continues receiving visitors from around the world. But those who understand her message know they must not linger at the reliquary. They must go to the grotto, as she herself requested. They must drink from the water. They must kneel upon the stones. They must listen, in the silence of their hearts, to the same message that echoed more than a century ago. Penance, prayer, conversion. The Immaculate One still waits beside the grave. And Bernadette, from her crystal repose, continues pointing toward her with the same faithfulness as always. Do not look at me, look at the one who sent me. There are lives that the world measures by their achievements, and there are lives that heaven measures by their surrender. Bernadette did not build cathedrals nor write theological treatises. She did not preach before multitudes, nor perform miracles with her own hands. Her greatness was of another nature, the greatness of crystal that lets light pass through without holding it back, the greatness of an echo that faithfully transmits the voice without distorting it. She was a messenger, and she fulfilled her mission. She was a witness, and she never changed her testimony. She was a broom, and she let herself be stored behind the door when the work was done. In a world that exalts the powerful, God continues to choose the small. In an age that venerates visible success, heaven continues to work in the silence of hospitals, in the darkness of convent cells, in suffering offered without witnesses. Bernadette reminds us that holiness does not consist in doing extraordinary things, but in letting God do extraordinary things through us. She did not seek the apparitions, she received them. She did not create the spring, she discovered it by obeying. She did not proclaim herself a saint, she simply told the truth until the end. Today, when noise deafens and doubt corrodes, Lourdes remains as an oasis of certainty. The water keeps flowing, the sick keep coming. And from her crystal reliquary in Nevers, a religious sister who died calling herself a poor sinner continues to proclaim with her silence the message she received beside the grave. Heaven exists. The Mother loves us. Grace is real. For those who have ears, Massabielle still whispers the words that change the world. Que soy era Immaculada Concepció. Saint Bernadette Soubirous, Virgin, humble messenger of the Immaculate, pray for us.